Hey guys, so welcome to the third episode, season 4 of the Teen Whisperer Show. And in this season, we are going to discuss journeys of various podcasters all around the world and how they are doing podcasts, their future goals, and many more. And she is the host of How I Fuck podcast. And it's pretty interesting because you must be thinking out of all the other topics, why choose this topic? And that's something that you will hear it out soon enough. She also books podcasts for other new podcast companies, which I actually recently heard from someone else, but still I didn't know how people do that. So we will dig into that as well. So, guys, let's welcome Natalie to the show. Nat, welcome to the show. So, please tell a little bit about yourself and your podcasting career.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Yes, so my name's Natalie, and I am the host and creator of the How I Fuck podcast. So we are a podcast about sex and inclusivity, diversity. So I think people usually, when they think of, when they hear about our podcast,
Mhm.
they think it's going to be very like, obviously it does get graphic, but it's not really meant to be a confessional, tell all kind of like juicy kind of podcasts in that way. Though there's nothing wrong with those kind of podcasts. Our podcast is trying to be a little more educational. And I think
Mhm.
what we try to do every episode is that we try to spotlight a different person from a particular community or who has like a specific background or lifestyle or condition and ask them what sex is like for them. And
Mhm.
when I say what is sex like for them, I don't necessarily just mean partnered sex. I
Mhm.
mean whatever sexual pleasure means to them. So whether that is masturbation or whether that is anything that turns them on, that doesn't necessarily mean like physical sex,
Yeah.
intercourse. So yeah, that's what we do, and I think the reason why we want to do that is because we want to bring awareness to people who might not have the tools to reach orgasm or to have sexual pleasure. For example, our first episode is with Andrew Gerza, who's a
Mhm.
disability awareness consultant. And so Andrew lives with cerebral palsy. And our episode focuses on his journey with sex
Mhm.
throughout his life as a person with cerebral palsy, CP as they call it. So he talks to us a lot about how his sex tools don't necessarily work for him when sex toys don't work for him because of the dexterity in his hands,
Mhm.
because of his CP.
Mhm.
So we talked about that, how there should be sex toys that meet those needs. And we also talk about how he he hasn't had really good experiences
Mhm.
dating online. So for him, he's had to hire sex workers. So we also talk about the legality of that.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of sex workers throughout just decades have been looked down
Mhm.
on. It seems like a kind of it's a job that people have a lot of issue with, but a lot of people with disabilities do benefit from sex workers. So that's really what our podcast is about, is just finding out where where people need more help or need more tools in order to like gain sexual pleasure, but
Mhm.
also just finding out why maybe the things that they like
Mhm.
what inspired that, or why do they like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can understand that. And you said saying that where they can find the tools for for pleasures and everything and stuff. And I just want to ask, what's your take on this? This porn industry, because in our country recently, what happened was it was around like 3 to 4 months, I think. So they actually thought that many rapes were happening in our country, recently because many, like, how to say. Uh, I don't know particular reason for it. Many people were getting raped, and many girls were even burned after getting raped. So many like suicidal thoughts and lots of stuff happened, and our government declared that this due because of pornography this actually happened. So for some people they say that it's an outlet for, okay, because for people, even I have consulted doctors that saying that, do you think it is okay to ban like porn sites or anything like that, or will there be any consequences for it? Because for some people they actually use it as an outlet rather than go, like entering into like sex works and anything like that. They use it as an outlet. So what's your take on this porn industry? Do you think it's actually good for some people, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Just because I watched a series on Netflix recently
Hmm.
by Vox, and they said that India just they completely banned porn. Is that correct? Like, there's a complete ban on it, or?
Yeah, it's kind of like they have banned the websites, probably not like the industries on the website, but obviously it's easy to find another website to get onto that. It's so easy on today's, because it's like how to say, movies, how movies are getting, rather than on being on legally, they are getting illegal attractions and all. It's just something like that. So yes, they have banned legally, they have banned, like a law has been issued, but still there are many loopholes for that. So yeah, this is the answer for the question.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That's. I mean, well, actually, maybe not cool. I'm not sure. So I think that it's interesting because I have this podcast which is about sex, but I
Hmm.
actually don't watch porn. Um,
Hmm.
I it's also kind of I'm pretty vanilla when it comes to sex, so I actually
Hmm.
don't watch porn, which I think is probably why I decided to start this podcast.
Hmm.
Um, but from friends and from people who I've been with, it always seemed like a very educational, like for them it was very educational,
Hmm.
but I also do see, I have noticed like the downside to porn, and I don't think it's necessarily things with mental health, but maybe there are studies about that and I'm
Yeah.
not aware of that, so I don't know too much about that. But I will say, and this is something that we explore in our next episode, I will
Hmm.
say there is a lot of sex racism
Hmm.
when it comes to porn. And by that I mean categorizing people, uh, just having categories in porn specifically about people of like color. So
Yeah.
having like the ebony categories or the Asian
Hmm.
categories, and even in the titles, like black girl gets this and
Hmm.
this by black cock or something, it's just something that I've spoken to some of my friends who are black who don't feel comfortable with, it's already, they seemed pretty already othered when it comes to dating as it is. And so to be completely othered and categorized like just in the porn industry, I just think there are some repercussions to that. I do think that that can be quite a negative, because I
Yeah.
think people, when they watch something and they see that there is a special category for a certain community, I think they start thinking that that community therefore is other. That community therefore is like different from them, and they should be, and maybe they should even be fetishized, which is something else that we cover, which is like, people saying like, I've never been with like an Asian person or a black person. I've actually kind of had experiences like that where I dated someone and they were like, oh, I'm always with Latinas, like that's my thing, and that's not really something.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess thank you for
For the
for
compliment.
dating, yeah, for dating out of your culture. I guess that's cool for exploring other cultures, but I don't
Hmm.
think that that doesn't feel too great to know that a person might have specifically went for you because of like your ethnicity as opposed to everything else. So I think that is kind of a negative when it comes to porn, but from my understanding it seems very educational, and I think that now we're really lucky that there are so many different options when it comes to
Hmm.
porn, and you don't necessarily have to go to Pornhub. You can go to porn sites that are more they're more LGBTQ friendly. They don't
Hmm.
categorize, they don't have an ebony
Hmm.
category. They don't, yeah, they don't categorize people based off race. They're a little more understanding, a little more PC when it comes to the way that they categorize things. I will say also that you brought up porn and sexual trauma. An episode that we explore later in our season is um, about sexual assault survivor, and she actually explained to me that porn and seeing images of people being violated actually helped her during her recovery. And from what she told me, the reason why was that, obviously during her trauma, she wasn't in control. She lost complete control of, she someone took advantage of her, And so being able to watch images or to choose the kind of porn she watches, and that specific porn kind of gives her control again. Like she is in control of the situation, which is a reason why she also turned to BDSM. You
Mm-hmm.
know, some sexual assault survivors go use BDSM as a way to cope, you know, because it
Mm-hmm.
gives them more leverage, it gives them more control. But yeah, porn is very, very tricky. It depends who's making it, and it depends like why you're kind of clicking on it as well. Like studies have shown that, you know, when something is going on, unfortunately, like whether, for instance, like the war on terrorism here in the United States, like with 9/11, a lot of people were looking at porn from people, like of people in the Middle East, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like they think it's so taboo, so therefore they fetishize it and they're like, oh, you
Yeah.
know. And the same thing with like, unfortunately, the same thing with black men in porn, where it's a black man with a white woman, or the white man gets embarrassed, or you know, a black man steals his white woman, you know. It's kind of like these social, these ideas that we have here in society, they kind of bled into the porn that we watch. And I think it's important to keep that in mind.
Yeah, yeah, I can. After hearing all this, I think I will be actually guilty if I didn't say this, because I was actually searching for guest, to come out on a podcast, and I actually came across you in a comment. Somewhere in the comment, you were actually commenting on that. So okay, let's explore who she is and what's her podcast all about. So I went in, I saw. At first, what I thought, I mean, like, wow, I mean, like, how can someone have a podcast? Because you are the first person that I actually saw who has a podcast like this. I've never seen anyone, not many people as I've seen who has a podcast like this. I mean, like, not judgmental, just saying different in a way. So I went, and then I first of all, I thought of texting you. Then I actually, my kind of side is actually so orthodox. People don't like talking about this, this pornography or things and stuff. But I think sometimes you have to teach people the bad stuff, just to know them that it's bad and you should go over it. So actually, I was so afraid I didn't text you. So and then when I posted the in-guest communication, and when you texted, I was like, okay, the universe is saying go and interview her, then maybe you can explore some things that, and you can help some people. So I'm actually sorry for that, but still, I don't know. The reason why is that I was really afraid at first, because I know what, but people will say, like, if someone you do that, and what people will say. But everyone is actually doing this. I actually had a pornography problem before. Like, I was so addicted to it, and actually consulted my doctor and said that, what to do, doctor, I'm having this. So he said, though it's not possible to remove everything, so what you can do is just, 4 times a month or 5 times a month, reduce that. So it's also healthy in some way. I don't know, porn and masturbation stuff. So you do that, and he also said that many people will be doing it. Your friends, even some elders will be doing it, but they just won't say it to you. For the sake of their pride, they won't say it to you. So for that, don't think that everyone is really good, so good, and they are not. They're really monks. They are not. Just reduce that, and you will be healthy as possible. So yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I was actually afraid to text, but I don't know, maybe it's going to happen. So the reason why I said all is that, did how many oppositions did you get at first? Because obviously, doing something like this, people will always think that, why do this? There are many podcasts. I mean, like, you are booking podcast for someone else, you can also do podcasts about that as well. So how many oppositions did you actually came across? I mean, like, if you don't need to go too personal if you don't want to. No problem with that. So just let me know what, like, if someone starts something like this, not too much like this, or even something like, how to pick a girl at some bar, or how to talk with a girl, something like that itself is being judgmental these days. I mean, like, what, a man needs a girl? So what's your problem with that? I don't know. So yeah, what's your take on that? I mean, like, your oppositions and stuff.
Yeah, so I didn't really get any pushback when I decided to do this. I will say that I decided to start this podcast in 2019. I started telling
Mhm.
my friends and my boyfriend, who is an audio engineer, and he records the episodes and he
Mhm.
mixes and masters them. He's really talented. I told him about it too, but the thing is that I really didn't like. I decided on it, and then we did the interviews. We did some interviews,
Mhm.
and then and then I unfortunately went through some health stuff, and then later the pandemic happened, you know. And so I finally, because of the pandemic, I finally got a chance to really work on this. But I don't feel like I got too much pushback, because I don't think anyone believed that I was actually going to do this, like the friends that I told. Because I had a podcast idea that I had an idea for a podcast like, oh, like before that. I think in like 2018, I wanted to do a podcast about immigration. And then I realized that that was really hard. And that would be like very, not to say that a podcast about like sex isn't, but
Mhm.
yeah, immigration is, it's hard. It was about undocumented immigrants, and which is, undocumented immigrants are obviously very kind of hard to find, you know. So I kind of shelved that idea, and then decided to just to do this. And the reason why I decided to do this was because I read this article about this sex coach with dwarfism, who noticed that there wasn't anyone with dwarfism who was talking sex education with people with dwarfism. Because people with dwarfism, they have different needs. Some of them, their arms are too short to reach their genitalia, and then some of them, they can't straddle because they have hip problems. And yet people weren't addressing that. So she took it upon herself to start talking about that. And so when I read that article, that's when I decided on this. And then also I'm just kind of, I would just like wonder very weird things. Like I would just be like, how do homeless people have sex? Like how do homeless people, like say you're homeless for years, you have no privacy.
Yeah.
Where do you have that? It's, I think it's a human right. I think it's definitely a need, you know, to either to masturbate, to have sex. And so I didn't get too much pushback. I thought I would get pushback from my family, but my dad, I think he's not too surprised by me at this point. You know, I come from a journalism, I have a journalism background, and I was a producer at Attention, which is a digital media company that covers a lot of things in terms of like politics and social justice. And I did a lot of videos about like cannabis and sex and BDSM and what we can learn from that, you know? So I don't think he was too surprised from it. But like I said before, I think people, when they hear this, they think that when I tell them about it, they think it's going to be a podcast about just like sex and like just talking about like the juiciest details, or even that I'm going to be talking about my sex life. I try not to on the podcast, because for me, I think it's more about like the person that I'm interviewing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually all about the guest, I think. So whenever doing interviewing podcast, and just one thing to say, I mean, it's really great you didn't get any opposition. I mean, like, trust me, if something is happening in my country, or especially in my side or something like this, obviously they would just make you run, and they would just yeah, I don't know how to describe that, but seriously, really, they would like really oppose a lot. I mean, like, I don't know, maybe I actually interview a lot of foreigners, all over the world. So maybe my thinking maybe really broad, like thinking like it's just sex, so what, I mean, like, it's not going to be the end of the world, something like that. I mean, like, it's not natural human need. So yeah, I think people might hit away on that. So one technical question is that you said you were booking podcasts for some other people. So let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, like, how do you actually do those kinds of things?
Okay, how do I make the podcast then?
Yeah, for them.
Yeah. Okay. So I hosted, and I edit the episodes too, but my boyfriend Ben, who's our audio engineer, he records it. So I was very fortunate that the person that I'm in a relationship with and that I live with has this equipment. So he has this equipment. He has, you know, he has so much experience. He's worked on he's worked on so many different projects with so many great people. So that was a win. That was really awesome. And so he records it. I host it, but I also do, I mean, I'm the one reaching out to people. I'm the one trying to research and trying to find the ideas for the episodes. And I'm also the one who scripts them. So the thing with my episodes is that I didn't necessarily want it to be just a conversation. I wanted to be a little more educational. Like I wanted to kind of like record myself and like have voiceover in order to have the story go a little faster, and in order to fill in some things, you know. So whenever we have someone explaining something, like mentioning something, like like HRT, for instance, I'll come in and try to explain that. I think like the inspiration behind that was a lot of NPR podcasts, like Invisibilia, for instance. So, that requires a lot of like me scripting and me researching. And so I decided to, and I don't think I ever really was good at asking for help growing up. Especially because I wasn't around that many people who could help, I guess you can say. At that time my family wasn't as big as it is now, and I didn't have too many friends growing up. So I definitely learned now as an adult that it's like okay for you to ask for help. And so I reached out to a friend who is a copy and fact checker for a really big streaming service for podcasts there. So I reached out to her, and she looks over the podcast episodes. And then I have friends who are in digital marketing. Some of them could help me out with that. So they have been helping me out with that. Um, but yeah, these episodes aren't really easy to do,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Like I really wish that I could do weekly, because I think the best way to market your stuff, like the best thing you can do for your podcast, is to have like content all the time. So like weekly is like really great, because like the more content you have, like the more like it will just grow from there. But because these episodes take a lot more time, I decided to do it bi-weekly. And then when a situation happens, or like when opportunity shows up, like I really have to grind in order to get that episode out. But I really had to reach out and look at the people that I'm friends with, see what kind of like resources they have. I also have a friend who is a professional voiceover artist, and so I was very not confident with my voice at the beginning of like this podcast, of this project. I think the first episode that we ever like edited, like that we ever like completed, I re-recorded that episode like 3 times, like my own voice. It's not like I did the interview over again. I couldn't do that,
Yeah.
but I re-recorded myself like 3 different times. And so I had her come in and coach me. And I think thankfully, thanks to her, I feel like my voice is at a better place right now, honestly, because I feel like it had like no confidence and stuff. So it was a lot of me keeping that in mind, and obviously looking at the podcast that I love, and seeing what they do and what they pay attention to. So yeah, they're not really easy to make, but I do think that they are. I do enjoy making them. I really, really, really do. And I definitely enjoy covering topics that some people have thought about, or that then maybe they talk about within their like network. But I don't think everyone's network is like the biggest network in the world. Like they can't openly talk to everyone about it. So that's also great as well.
Yeah, yeah, and just two observations from one of from your structure of the podcast. The first is guest. I mean, like, I know it's really hard to reach out to someone and ask this, and to talk about their life and all. Do you, just in a funny way, as I'm asking, do you have any like foreclosure, or any agreement or something like that? Like, we won't do this, we won't do that, any of that. I mean, like, people are talking about their sex life. They will obviously be so careful about it, on the mic. But still, sometimes they would be like, if the host is too funny or something like that, they will always, and you having journalism background, obviously can take people, words out of people, obviously, and in a good way, saying in a good way, not in a bad way. So you can obviously take the words. So do you have any agreements in between, anything like that, or it's just a word, or confrontation, saying that it's my word against yours, anything like that?
Yeah. Thankfully, not really. I will say that there has been moments where, and I think this is on me. Like, I think, I do try to do pre-interviews, but then, when you get a guest that you're super excited about and who has like a following, you're just like, or who has like such a crazy profession, you're just like, oh my God, I'm so excited and let's do this. And then when you start talking to them, you realize that they're not going to like express as much as you thought they would, even though you kind of explained to them what the podcast was about, like you kind of realize that. So I've had situations where it's, I really need to try to like get stuff out of them, you know, and I completely respect people whenever they say like, I don't want to talk about that, you know.
Yeah.
But I will say it can be disappointing sometimes, you know, because you are looking for that and you're just
Yeah.
like, oh well, I thought that that was what the interview was about. I thought we were both on the same page, you know. And then that, like, again, like, I think that is on me. Like, I think that I need to better articulate this, or really make sure to absolutely like get on the phone with everyone that I speak to. And like I said, you get a guest that you're really excited about and maybe their schedule is super packed and you're just like, let's just schedule the interview immediately. Let's not even try scheduling anything in between, like a conversation, you know? And then you realize that when you're in it. But yeah, it's kind of like, it's just growing pains. It's something that I had to learn while doing this, is that I need to be better about that. Like yesterday, I spent an hour or two really looking into guests for a specific episode that I have in mind. And so it was a lot of me like checking Twitter, Instagram, all these places, and not just like looking like, you know, not just like finding someone and being like, oh, I think they're perfect, but actually like watching videos of them if there's anything out there, or reading articles that they may have written, or, you know, really looking through their Instagram and seeing like how, you know, how they speak, or, you know, how they present themselves. So that can be time consuming, but I do think that that is I do think that that is a good tip to have, like a good thing to have, is, you know, because like you, like I said, you'll get excited about someone and then you'll get on the podcast with them and you realize like, oh, they're actually not going to talk about that thing, or oh, like they don't want to repeat that, or, you know. So, but thankfully I haven't had any like, you know, arguments or anything like that. I think for me, I am just a very curious person, and I think that's why I became a journalist, you know? So I'm
Yeah.
just like, yeah, I'm here to just like really listen to them and then ask them all like the crazy questions that I have, you know? But yeah, thankfully I haven't had anything like that.
Oh, that's nice because yeah, you're right. Because sometimes if you can't vibe with that particular guest, like then it's you're right. The podcast won't go like really as well as as you thought. Because at first I was like, how when I started my podcast around like September, I think so. I didn't actually think this through. I just wanted to okay, so let's start a podcast. Like what's going to be all about? I just started it. How I actually got my first guest is that I went to Instagram and in the search tab I typed hashtag entrepreneur. That's the thing I typed, and I went to the recent tab and just DM'd every single person saying that I'm starting a podcast. I would love to have you as a guest. I just DM'd everyone. I didn't care about the followers. I didn't care about the guest. I just DM'd. I just want my first experience to be like that. And thankfully, someone did. He's from India only, and he responded and he said, "Okay, let's get onto it. No problem." And trust me, it was a phone. Actually, this is my new phone. Actually, it's really costly, but how that phone actually was, it was so cheap. It actually had its battery blown up a little bit because it was about to explode a little bit. It was like that. So I was okay, no problem. Even if it explodes, I mean, like I was actually a little bit of distance, having my headphones, so won't be a problem on that. So yeah, I think having the guest around that it's really of importance. And second, observation from your saying that the audio you had around like 3 days something like for the training of the your voice. So how much importance do you think that the tonology comes when it comes to podcasters? I mean, like if I'm recording, it's a business podcast. Obviously, any tone, obviously, for that matters. If it's something like true crime or this kind of sport, that requires a particular tonology, right? To make your audience flow through the particular podcast. So, how much importance do you think that? Do you think it's actually really important? Like, what's the percentage of that? Do you think?
Yeah, I think it's really important actually, because you know, I have a friend who told me that she stopped listening to a podcast because of someone's voice, you know? And then I
Oh
was
my
like, when she
god.
said that, and this was, yeah, before, this was before, I will say that she is very particular. She's a very particular person. But yeah, when she said that, this is when I hadn't started recording yet. So I was like a little spooked by that. I was just
Hmm.
like, oh, wow. Yeah, I guess that's something to keep in mind. And then now that I think, you know, when she said that, I was like, you know what, I do remember there was a podcast that I also didn't finish because the people kind of, their voices kind of like, I felt like they were too monotone and they kind of bored me, you know? So I do think it's really important if you're doing like true crime podcasts, like narrative podcasts, you know, or like the podcast I'm doing right now, which is like documentary almost, you know, like when you have someone explaining this and talking to you and
Mm,
reading a script. I do think it's very important. I also think it's important because I will be honest, like I looked at one of like my favorite podcasts, Radio Lab. It's super big. It's been around for like
mm,
13 years or something. And I was looking at recent comments, and yeah, a lot of people were saying that there's too many likes and ums and all
mm.
this stuff, and they're just like, you should send. There's a comment saying like you should send maybe one of your producers to like a vocal coach or something, and that was also something on the back of my mind was like, oh, people say that, So I do think it is very important, because I mean, me from experience and from talking to my friend, like I have like not continued listening to a podcast because I thought it was too monotone. That being said, also I do know that I still need some work to do with, like, I say a lot and I still say like. I'm from Southern California. I was born and
Mm.
raised here. I'm from LA. I'm from
Wow.
the Valley, so I'm a Valley girl. So I know I say that a lot, and it's gonna be hard to overcome that, to like to manage that. But I'm going to have to, especially if I want listeners who aren't just in Southern California. I don't want to sound like, I don't want to sound like specifically only very California. I want to have a voice that can be relatable throughout like the world, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. I can I you bring up this Los Angeles, your city that you were raised and everything, and just this curious question I actually always have, and I never asked him. My foreigner is that there's a city next to Los Angeles called Las Vegas, right? Las
But
Vegas.
Las Vegas is like, I think 3 hours away from us, I think.
Yeah, 3 hours. So is it
Yeah.
actually true what they show in the movies? Is it actually true that actually happens in Las Vegas? Because I've seen this movie called Hangover, all right? So
Yeah.
Hangover or Ocean's 11, Ocean's 12. There are tons of movies for that. Is it actually true what they showed? Because many of my friends and even I sometimes believe that the American culture and like what they are showing in the Hollywood movies is actually true. I mean, like, yeah, that's a little bit of exaggeration. I can understand that, but at least 25%, 30% is true. So I'm asking you, you are like 3 hours drive. I'm sure you must have gone somewhere, maybe or maybe not. Of course, you've heard of it. So please clarify this because if my friends are sometimes asking me, dude, you are talking to foreigners all over the world, just ask them. Why can't you ask them? Because yesterday I asked one of my guests that this high school prom and everything and stuff. This is it actually that much exaggerated as they are showing because we don't have anything like that here. So most people they really suffer a lot because of that. So just tell me, is it actually true or not?
So I grew up, yes, I grew up in the Valley in Los Angeles, but I grew up in a very like predominantly Latinx community, and so it wasn't really a very wealthy community. So the schools that I went to, the public schools I went to, were unfortunately pretty run down. The classes were like just packed. Like we really didn't have that many resources there, and I went to school with a lot of like people that aren't like, basically, like, I'm not saying that my family had money, but like almost no one at my
Mhm.
school had money. We came from like families that were like hustling, and a lot of like immigrant families too. My parents are immigrants, and it was very common to like talk to someone there who also their parents were also immigrants. So sorry, that was the air conditioning. That scared me. So but I will say, even though we weren't like a wealthy school, and so it doesn't look like, I don't know, like Gossip Girl or something, I will say that, yeah, prom was kind of a big deal for us. And I used to watch TV, like, yeah, TV shows and movies where prom was a big deal. And I thought maybe this was just only for like the wealthy Laguna Beach kind of like schools. But when prom came up, like for us, it was a big deal. And we were actually really fortunate because we had our prom at Universal Studios,
Wow.
which was like pretty. Yeah, I don't know how we like did that,
Wow.
because I was just like, we should. I mean, it was great, but I think we should maybe have used those resources for like books and stuff, because we
Mhm.
didn't have that much stuff. But it was still very nice. And for my friends and I, like, yeah, it was like a huge, huge deal for us. Like, we really yeah, we got all dolled up and stuff, and yeah, like the trying to like find dates and like all that. Yeah, it was a pretty big deal. People really loved it. People who I didn't think were gonna be there, like goths and stuff, were there. And I think it might have been because of like the whole prom like movie trope, that it's a huge
Mhm.
deal. So yeah, for that was pretty big. And then when it comes to like Las Vegas, God, I'm gonna sound really boring, but actually I'm not like a big fan of Vegas. I really don't like it. Like I think I've only been there like 2 or 3 times. One of them was for like a wedding, and the other one was for to go see a concert. Like I just went specifically there to go see like the Postal Service when they had their reunion tour in 2013. Like that's it. Like I didn't go for the gambling. Like I really didn't care for that. But from like the stories I've heard, for instance, my boyfriend, he loves Vegas and he has been there so many times with his friends. And like the stories he's told me, yeah, they are pretty obviously they're not as criminal or illegal as like
Mhm.
movies like The Hangover, but yeah, it's gotten pretty crazy. Like the stuff that he's told me, him and his friends, like the trouble that they've gotten themselves into, or just like, yeah, like it has gotten really crazy for him. So, I
Okay.
mean, kudos for him. Obviously, we don't want anyone to do anything
Mhm.
illegal, but yeah, it's gotten pretty crazy for him. But for me, like for me personally, I'm not really a fan of Vegas, really.
No. Oh, because when I was in my childhood, even like we were my friends, we were like, and we were so crazy about the name itself, like Vegas. I mean, like the pronunciation of that actually, it's really instigated us all. I mean, like it's called a paradise, and it's childhood, fantasy and all, everything was that, and after the age comes, I mean, like it's like I don't know. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to ask. So yeah, it's just one thing before going on to the final question is that tell us about your stats, like how much listeners are you getting, how much traffic are you driving from, is there anything in the middle of that, just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I haven't really been asked that too much. I
Mhm.
guess I'll just be transparent. So we have 2 episodes out. It's only been 3 weeks since the first episode. Yeah, I think it's only been 3 weeks since the first
Mhm.
episode. So each episode has like about 300 downloads right now, which I think is like fine. Like I think
It's
that's,
fine. It's
obviously.
fine. It's actually more than more than fine for those people who actually started just for 3 weeks down the road. It's actually more than
Oh,
fine.
really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay, so yeah, I think like I'm happy with that, Like obviously like I wish I could say it was already in the thousands, but it's not, but it's only been like yeah, it hasn't been that long, and I'm proud of that. And also I know that it's going to grow from there. Like, I'm definitely banking on it growing. I have been spending a lot of time on Instagram. We have an Instagram account that the Instagram account is the one that's a little bit blowing up, honestly. Like, yeah, like, when I started taking it super seriously, like, I was just like, I made the Instagram account like months ago, but I didn't post anything on it, because we didn't have anything yet to promote. So when I started promoting on it, maybe like a month ago or like 5 weeks ago, something like that, we really didn't have that many followers. But now, yeah, now it's like like, it keeps growing, and I'm starting to see like the trends and stuff, and I'm starting to see that like the people that follow us on Instagram or who are liking our content, they are starting to go over to the podcast, which is great. And so I think if I keep that up, I think that will also help it. Also, we have a sponsor. We have someone who, one of my best friends has a great magazine, an online magazine
Mhm.
she's had for years. And I actually used to freelance for that magazine
Mhm.
back in college, actually. So her and I go way back. And so she has a pretty big following of like Instagram followers for the magazine.
Mhm.
Like they already have an audience from all the years that they've been around. So she is sponsoring it in terms of like marketing, really. So
Mhm.
she is promoting it and like adding all the episodes to her, like to the magazine and all this stuff. So that's definitely has helped enormously as well. But yeah, it's really interesting. It's also interesting to see how people gravitate to certain like hashtags and stuff on
Yeah.
Instagram. Like for example, the our like a post that I made, like
Mhm.
I made this like it's about polyamory, and it's like at 420 likes right now. It just like exploded. Like I have no idea. Like I will have things there that's like 20 likes or something, but this specifically exploded. Like all these people really liked it, and then were sharing it and saving it and all this stuff, you know. And yeah, it was really, it's interesting because I'm just like, okay, there's like a huge, I mean, I kind of already knew this, but there's a huge polyamory community who's very like active on Instagram and who want this kind of content that is like positive. It's like positive content about their community, you know, because the polyamory community has obviously like, you know, experienced a lot of just like
Yeah.
backlash and just like this isn't right or it's not real or whatever people say. And so them finding that positive community like was like, I guess was great for them. So they've been like really liking it and sharing it. But it was interesting because it's like I had posts that are like 20, 30 likes, and then that one was like 420 likes. And I'm like, okay. And yeah, and I really hope that like looking at those kind of stats like on Instagram is going to help me with like obviously with the podcast, because now I'm noticing there is people in these communities who want that kind of content. So like exploring that early on in like the next season or in the next couple months or something, you know, like trying to do that. But yeah, that's our, I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty content with the stats that we have right now with like the downloads. Um, I really hope that it just grows from there, you know.
It will
Also,
definitely it will
I
because don't ever say that it's fine, okay? Because it's actually hurts me a lot because I mean, I'm actually doing a lot of stuff, but my main aim is not about getting listeners. For my podcast, it's all about that I can actually talk to a lot of interesting people around the world, and here actually in this side, podcast is actually it's starting to grow right now. So just it's like the Gary Vaynerchuk formula: just be first and be fast. Then if you do that, then obviously it's kind of blowing up. But yeah, I mean, like having 300 downloads for that, kudos to you. So don't worry about that. It's really an awesome thing. So just one thing. This is kind of an out of box question. Um, who was the last person that you actually made smile yesterday?
that I actually what
You actually made smile yesterday.
that made smile yesterday. I hope my boyfriend.
Last person.
I
Wow,
hope
that's nice.
Yeah, I hope that was him. Yeah, honestly, we're taking this pandemic pretty seriously. So, which is kind of annoying my family, honestly, because we've been taking it seriously since the beginning of this pandemic. Like, actually, I've been taking it a little seriously since before it started, really. Like, when the New York Times were like, you guys need to prepare, I was telling my boyfriend like we need to prepare for this, like we really like we need to, you know. And so we did, and we've been taking it very seriously, thankfully. And it's good to, it's just the two of us, so you know we live together. It's good to live with someone who also takes it seriously, because if I lived with my family I think I would go crazy, because I don't think they're taking us as seriously as we are. So honestly it's just him and I all day every day. Not really, I mean I try to see friends like maybe at a park, like social distance, but I'm also trying to keep that like not as frequently. But yeah, I would hope that he's like the last person I made smile. We also went to Trader Joe's yesterday, and I know that we talked to the cashier, so I guess that's another person that smiled. But yeah.
Because whenever I ask this question, the problem obviously comes is that I actually asked who made you smile today. Actually, today is the question that I actually asked, but obviously it's morning there, so obviously you would say either you or someone who you live with. So that's why I asked yesterday. Okay, yesterday means last person. Obviously, it will be a different person, but yeah, that's actually.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right because this pandemic actually, we are actually on literally like 4 to 5 months of lockdown. Okay, it's kind of a lockdown, but still people are actually daily wage laborers have to go out. They have to eat. They have to do some stuff to earn money. So they are going out, and some people we are still inside. And for the first 2 months of lockdown, I didn't even cross my door. It's actually there. I didn't even cross it. I just in my room I was there all day long. For 2 months I was there. I was about to go crazy, but fortunately, I have this, doing freelance video editing for, podcasters and people and stuff. So I was happy to do that. So yeah, I can understand, going crazy with your parents. I can clearly understand your point. So no worries on that.
Yeah.
So one final thing before going on to the closing is that this is something that I always ask my guest. What do you actually think is the best tip that you can provide to a fellow podcaster in order to grow, according to your version?
There's a lot of podcasts around, and we want guests, and we want to have like the coolest guest possible, or someone like with a relatively big following. and that's awesome. But I think like before we get too excited and we get on like a podcast with someone, I think it is important to do the research, and I think it is important to like try to get on the phone with them and make it that super like clear to them what you're going to be doing. And if you can watch videos of them, I mean, who knows, like maybe they like did a lecture once, or they have an audience on Instagram and they talk to their audience. I think that is really important, because you want to be really clear about the kind of content that you want, and then also you want to be the one in control when you're interviewing someone. Obviously, in my case, I'm mostly a listener. Yes, I will ask questions, but I'm really giving them the space to express themselves. And so, but at the same time, I want to make sure that they're giving me the kind of content that I am looking for. And I think that's okay to admit. Like, I think it's okay to try to ask people to repeat themselves, or try to ask them like this, repeat a question really, and ask them again, like, can you explain this to me? Because I think that while it is exciting to have like a really awesome guest, I think like you really need to think about like what you want in this episode. Like, you need to always remember that this is the goal of this episode, and not lose it just because, I don't know, just because someone went a whole different direction and you're just like, you know what, I'll just go with that. I'll go with that. I mean, sometimes that can work, but if you want to have consistency, if you want to be consistent with the content that you're creating, and you want your audience to, feel like your podcast is reliable, and it's like, I can go there for that kind of content, then I think it's important to, push for that kind of material, or make sure that the guests that you're bringing in will definitely meet the things that you want.
Wow, wow, that's good. That's good. Definitely, that's definitely a great thing because coming on to a whole different kind of genre of a podcaster. I think this is the first time that people will hear about this, so I'll definitely they will appreciate it. So, is there anything else you want to ask me?
Um, well, how is it going with you? How are you? Are you excited about your podcast? You said this was the third episode, right?
Yeah, it's actually season four of the third episode. So I actually been doing like first season I did. It's all about entrepreneurs. First season I did, and second is all about the photographers that I did. And after that, what I actually kind of stumbled like the purpose of the podcast, what to do then after all that. I just randomly invited people like talking and stuff. I kind of stumbled. And then season three was all about the podcasters. It's actually going to be ended on 11th, I think. So yeah, from 11th, I have a last recording that will be ended. Yeah, mostly I'm having good listeners amount, mostly from the US side, not my Indians, because most of the podcasters are rising too much on the US, so I have listeners from that. So even if some of my friends will ask me, I mean, like, don't you ever have an Indian on your podcast? I mean, I'm not being racist right now because I'm an Indian, I know that, but it's just that people that I vibe with is actually more on the outside of my country because I just want to explore out their culture and how they are actually working things out and everything and stuff. So yeah, I think it's totally awesome, and this will be out I think next month in the middle or in the last, that will be probably out, and I will update you with everything because I actually create a lot of content out of this, small content out of this, and I may even tag you, like spamming every single post. I might even tag you on that. So you have to give me permission on that. So please don't mind on that. So yeah, I think that's actually most of my podcast is all about, and how I actually got excited.
That's awesome. That's really really exciting. It's exciting to do a project on your own.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So, guys, thank you so much for listening to this. So, I just have to quick the thing. How are the takeaways? So, we have the podcast. So, we talked to the porn industries, how the trauma for rapists, or things like that, and how they're actually doing podcasts. Like they have a really good structure, and you guys should check that out as well. And the guests, how they're getting onto this, and their chronology, because tone is something that's really important. Like she said, some people will actually stop listening to your podcast if you don't have quite right tone for that, and sometimes it's hard to keep up the talking because I actually kind of have like it's kind of hereditary for my family. Kind of have like lungs. We have a lung problem. Like until some age we have like hereditary. So my throat always dries whenever I talk a lot of stuff. My throat dries up. So yeah, I think tones also get problem, guys. So take care of that. Well, I leave timestamps below so you guys can check that out. And thanks so much, Nat, for coming on this. And I really like your name because it's kind of Natasha for Avengers movie. I really like that name on that. So thanks so much for coming out to the podcast. So is there anything else you want to convey at last?
No, but thank you for calling me Nat. I like it when people call me Nat. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. So, guys, thanks so much for listening. And if you have any questions, leave in the comment section below, and I will give every link in the description so that you can connect with her. And if you're thinking of starting a podcast like this, don't be afraid. It's good to go because everyone needs this, and everyone is actually doing it. So, if you are afraid to show the world like what world truly actually needs at least 50% of it, then I think you are missing out a lot of things. So, make sure you do that. And I'll see you guys next podcast. Thank you so much.